to look is at ourselves and what our life is giving us and what it might be wanting to take away, and what nature teaches us. And so that's always been a strong focal point, because I asked a lot of questions at a very young age. And I was very sensitive, very empathic, and I knew that I wasn't going to become a politician, and I certainly wasn't in this family to be groomed to be in politics. I wanted to take it to a much deeper level, and there weren't really any expectations, maybe a little bit, but when it all came down to it, there was certain family members, particularly my grandfather, who recently transitioned, which is Ike's son, who really related to me, and told a bunch of really funny stories in the last few gatherings we got to have with him, just about who he truly is. And I just have to share one because my aunt shared this at his memorial service. He was an ambassador to Belgium, and he used to be a drinker. I used to be a drinker too. We had that in common. And my aunt would notice when not to talk to him in the morning because he'd be wearing his bathrobe and his sunglasses and his socks, and that's it. And it was like, okay, Dad's hungover this morning, better not do anything or say anything to him. And so anyway, this VW pulls up, a bunch of hippies, and they're hanging out, and my grandfather looks out the window and asks my Aunt Mary, who are those people? What's that all about? Oh, they call those hippies. That's what they call people in my generation. He goes, oh, how very interesting. And he decides, even though he's wearing the socks, the sunglasses, and the bathrobe, and this is not a good morning for him, to go out there and say hello to them. And so he goes out to the van, shakes everybody's hand. My aunt's looking out the window like, really? And, he's making conversation, and everything's going really well. Next thing you know, my granddad, her father, goes into the VW with the kids, and God knows what he might have done in there. I don't know if she saw smoke coming out of the window, but next thing you know, he gets out of the van, and he's smiling, and he goes back up to the house, and he said, you know what, Mary? If I was in your generation, I would have been one of them. And it's funny because he would confide in me. He goes, even my own father didn't know what a hippie I am. And, I don't tend to label myself, but I think, when I used to have dreads down my back, that was an easy label for people to throw at me. But it was, besides labels, because we're all just ourselves, there was that resonance that we had, that it really is about the earth. It really is about peace. It really is about justice. But sometimes, there's a bit of a battle that's involved. And so being a very sort of down-to-earth family, very humble, definitely not big money, love is a huge thing, the family and family values. And, no matter how weird you are or how different you are, you're still going to be loved in this family. So, there was years where I wasn't sure about it, and I was in major identity crises because I was worried that, I was, giving people strokes for the stuff that I was doing. And I've, really have been accepted, so I'm really grateful for that. But Star Knowledge, is like my soul family. I'm just grateful that when I do go to family gatherings that there's a certain level of respect and appreciation. So as far out there as my work is, there's some acceptance there, and no doubt because, Eisenhower obviously dealt with a lot of extraterrestrial races. There's a movie coming out about his encounter with beings from Venus, Valiant Thor, Victor 1. He put them on a VIP status for 3 years in the Pentagon, hoping to help them with their mission, to help rid the planet of disease, to help, share free energy, and to help us really get on the right track. But, of course, you've got the shadow government, and the origins of that go back thousands of years. And so in my presentations, I like to delve into our galactic history, how things got to be the way they are, who are these hidden controllers, what are these manipulations all about, who are the benevolent races that are here to assist us, and how does it connect with us? Well, the two are very linked because, we're a microcosm of what we see in the macro. So it really all comes down to us understanding that we're the Gaia body, we're the earth body. We are made of earth, air, fire, water. That's our soul nature. And there's these control agendas, which I call a manifestation of the negative ego, free will, kind of going in the direction of, okay, power, greed, what can I do with that? How can I get away with that? And how can we sort of overlay these agendas on others through programming so that they willingly give their free will away so that we can have complete and total control over them? And this is the world that we're in. Well, we carry those energies, we see how it plays out in our lives, and we know that it expires. Something deeper and more profound ends up cracking through all the time. which comes in the form of epiphanies and revelations like, wow, self-correct, or, those moments where you have to really go deep inside and say, maybe there's a better way. Look at all the destruction I'm creating. Look at all the relationships I'm losing. Look at the job that I couldn't keep and this and that. And it ends up becoming a blessing because we have to realize that in this world of duality, the light and dark both serve us. We're made of light and dark. We just really need to understand the difference between what's organic and what's, a projection, a technological manipulation, and, something to basically siphon our imagination and our creative energy away from us to then use as a weapon against us. So the more we give that energy over to something that does not benefit our future, we're actually giving them our free will and saying, okay, you can have some of my creative juices, you can have some of my energy, and then they just shoot it right back at us, and it ends up staring us in the face, and we have to just say, wait a second, we do have a lot more control than we think. But there's a lot we don't have control over, and this is how we're working with the cosmos right now when we look at the planetary bodies. We've got personal planets, things like the Sun, Moon, Mars, Venus, Mercury. We have a little bit of control over that. We can change our minds. We can open our minds. We can take in information. We can have it shift us. We have our moon energy. If we feel like crying, we can cry. If we feel like being depressed, well, sometimes we don't really ask for it, but we can sit in that space until we have a breakthrough. And we can look for that breakthrough, and we can set intentions. We can raise it to a level of being rather psychic and very intuitive. Our heart energy, we can decide what works for us, what we love, and we can, actually expand upon that. That's why there's that thing called acquired taste. You didn't eat Brussels sprouts when you're a kid, but then when you're an adult, you love it. So that we have some sort of control over. And then our sun energy is our creative essence. So I look at this as the skipper of the ship, our personal planets. We get to just sort of like feel like we have a certain amount of control. We've got the rudder, we've got the sails, we feel pretty good about it. We decide what mood we're in, what energy we want to carry that day. And that's kind of what it's like when we wake up in the morning. But then there's the outer planets, Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune. Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune we don't have any control over at all. These are the greater forces. We can only align with them. Pluto's all about death, rebirth, and alchemy and transformation. When a Pluto cycle wants to come, it's not like, hey, I want to go through a death cycle, come find me. No, it slams you down. You feel like you're dying. A lot of people have suicidal thoughts. I'm sure everybody in this room has pondered those thoughts. Sometimes it's a great coping mechanism for me, even though I'm not going to do it, But you know that you're being changed forever. The first stage, though, you can't think that far ahead because it's so uprooting and difficult. It's a death. And it's like the physical body sometimes says, okay, let me come with you. And it's like, no, we're going to stay here. We're going to have a transformation instead. Because we can have a lot of life-death situations and rebirths and deaths and transformations within this one body. And it's alchemical because it changes things forever. When a caterpillar's in a cocoon, it becomes a butterfly. As humans, we have brains, though. We think too much. So we're in the cocoon, and we're like, get me out. I'm ready to get out. And sometimes we're like, I don't want to get out. And we have a really difficult time with the Pluto energy. And when I do charts, I can tell, how everybody's relationship to these planets are. So it's really a lot of fun to then help them change their relationship with these things. Because we all have access to these energies. We just all relate to them differently. So that's Pluto. And so that's almost like the weather. You're a skipper of the ship, but then, okay, you've got the waves. You can't really control the waves. You can, be adaptable and flexible to it. You can allow yourself to, make decisions that change you forever so that you make wise choices about how to navigate. Then there's the other one. There's Uranus. Uranus is all about shock and upheaval and crisis, and even trauma. So we don't ask for that. That's why it's called shock. It comes out of left field. Sometimes we think, if I just have happy thoughts, I'm going to reflect a happy reality. Yes, that works, but sometimes we have to be willing to expand upon that and be accepting of the things that we have no control over. We might have agreements to it from past lives. We might, on some level, which we definitely do from our higher self and our unconscious self, we get this. We're prepared in a lot of ways, but our conscious mind is just like, what? How could that happen? Whether it's your vehicle blowing up, to a relationship all of a sudden breaking up out of the blue, to having your house burned down. Let's see, shock. Just shock in general. It's not comfortable. It's uprooting, it's ungrounding, and some people, end up feeling traumatized and might have PTSD for the rest of their lives. I certainly do. There's some traumas I haven't fully gotten over yet, but I'm working on it. But it's amazing because there's a reason for it. there's forces out there that are really helping us and guiding us. They want us to wake up, and this is what Uranus is all about. Uranus is the planet of shock, upheaval, epiphanies, universal truth, and oneness and unity consciousness. So a planet that's all about shock and upheaval and trauma is also linked to unity consciousness and great awakening. Well, sometimes we need those things in order to snap out of the conditioning and the programming. But we tend to get so caught up in the stories that we can't let go of the stories. If we've had a difficult childhood, or we're still hanging on to a past relationship, or, you know, all the stuff that burned up in that house or whatever, and we don't understand, like, maybe it's because we need to move over here, we need to try something new out, or we need to let go of those things. It doesn't serve us anymore. So with Uranus, very often people go through a lot, and then in hindsight they say, you know what, I'm really glad that accident happened because it woke me up. I'm a completely different person now, and if it wasn't for that, I'd still be stuck. Even a family member once said to me, because I was just having a really tough time, she said, you know what, the worst thing that ever happened to me was I had a happy childhood. I was like, really? She's like, yeah. She's like, I wasn't prepared at all for anything. I was not prepared at all for life. And we see this too in the world, you know, the concept of rock bottom. These people with money and fame, all of a sudden they end up like drug addicts, like completely and totally penniless. Or you find, you know, people that are really, really, really struggling, you know, consider themselves at rock bottom and end up reaching success. It doesn't choose situations. You know, rock bottom is just whether you're at the heights or whether you're at the depths and the lowest levels, or have the greatest family or the worst family, people still have crises and upheavals and breakdowns and misfortunes, but it's all like a big blessing at the end of the day because the epiphany comes. And Uranus is connected to the electrical light of spirit. It affects our nervous system. But when we remember it based on a trauma, we always get triggered and we never really let go of it and we're very anxious. But when we can integrate it and ground it, our DNA upgrades, we're able to anchor a lot of light onto the planet, and we're actually able to shift things. If we miss the mark of what these lessons are about or what these epiphanies are about, we just end up playing the story over and over again in our heads, and we just stay in this 3D mindset because we think that it's all about success, the American dream, having that happy family, having the great kids, and having everything be working out. And we tend to forget to bless and find appreciation for all the adversity. You know, and I'm a living example of how much adversity can serve a person because, you know, I decided to get on it like a horse and say, all right, you know, this is a wild stallion of a path, but I'm not going to let it kick me around. I'm not going to let it walk all over me. I'm going to ride on its back, and I'm going to learn how to ride this thing. And I'm going to love it. I'm going to appreciate it. And I'm going to start to thank, you know, the so-called adversities because it really helped me to do what I do now, which I've, you know, always been wanting to do or geared towards doing or focused on doing since I was a kid. And it has everything to do with this planetary body and our connection to this planetary body and the potential that we have as a human race. So the third outer planet is Neptune. Neptune's all about multidimensional energy, creative imagination, going into dream time, being able to hold an intention or a focus consistently until reality begins to mirror it back. But people give up often. It takes too long. They lose patience. But we're working with earth energies, and so it's like a seed. You have to plant it, you have to nurture it, and then it harvests. We have to be patient because sometimes our consciousness moves so quickly, we forget that we are working with cycles of nature and we need to, you know, just stay consistent. And it's really our voice that keeps amplifying it. We're sound healers, so the words that we choose are going to be what nurtures those dreams. If we say, like Dr. Dream was talking about earlier, yeah, I'd really like to do that, but I can't because of this, and that. You know, basically you're throwing a lot of weeds on that plant, or you're, you know, putting pesticides on it or trying to nurture it with something that really doesn't work. But if you nurture it with a certain level of confidence, a certain level of trust and surrender, and embracing the process no matter how the process plays out, it's amazing what we can achieve. And we get both negative and positive. The problem is that we judge it. You know, we judge the negative and we only want the positive, but the negative is a huge thing. It's actually not negative. It's just helping us with the ebb and flow. You know, so a lot of people who are really, really out there sometimes find themselves losing that momentum, and then they're back into the practical stuff. They say, I feel blocked. Everything's slowed down. I have no patience. I can't take this anymore. This is just horrible. But they don't realize that they're gifting this physical plane with whatever epiphanies and wherever they went when they were out there, they're bringing it back. So there's sort of this back and forth going on. If there's no back and forth, then you're not really grounding it. And the earth plane is not able to receive those energies. Even though she's made of all this, she's teaching us something. I mean, in my talks, I talk a lot about our galactic history and how the planetary body became what it is today. and why it's the way it is today and why we are functioning on a much lesser level than we used to function at. I mean, even every morning, I can't believe how labor-intensive it is to be human. It's just like, why does it take so much? And I'm a very low-maintenance person. I like to rush around through my day just as quickly as I talk and I walk. I'm just kind of one of those fast-moving things, like, really, we got to stop and brush our teeth? We got to stop and, like, do our laundry? And it's like, maybe I was like a dolphin or a bear in a past life, because I just remember getting up and going, like, what is this? But, it's all about that anchoring and grounding and advancing ourselves and moving slowly through this process, because when we used to have the advanced DNA, we ended up becoming a fallen race. I go into the history of how that happened, and not all of us are responsible for what conditions took place to lead to the reality we're living in, but we are in a rehabilitation process. And so these outer planets help us to upgrade our DNA again, to become the lucid dreamer again, and to have epiphanies and revelations that will give us exactly what we need to advance. So what does the skipper need to do? Be more adaptable and flexible to these greater forces. It can only be a master sailor if it does this. So the personal planets are how you're going to carry yourself as you adjust to the changing climate, which that individual doesn't have much control over. And that's okay, because true masters have the adaptability, the flexibility, and the neutrality to not have too much of an issue with it. And it's just sort of like rolling with the punches, because these outer planets are what are linking us back to our galactic consciousness. We're working with 7 chakras, we're working with a lot of, things here. But when we go through enough activations based on handling those life-death processes and rebirth processes and the shocks that we don't necessarily ask for, and the multidimensional energy that sometimes brings us into connection with lower astral beings and weird energies, because we're moving into a nightmare because we keep talking ourselves out of being able to achieve what we came here to achieve, which attracts all these entities that like to feed on our weaknesses about it. But it's serving us because it helps us to see what we can adjust on a personal level to work with what's available. Then you've got the in-between planets, Jupiter and Saturn. Saturn's all about limitation, responsibility, control. In the lowest form of it, it comes from outer authority structures. You need to do this. You need to work 9 to 5. You need to go to school. You need to go to college. All this sort of stuff. Governments, religion, everything that tells us the rules and how we should do it. That's the lower level of Saturn. It's not considered a personal planet or an outer planet. It's sort of like how we can kind of, gauge how we're going to work with all these energies, which makes a difference between how we handle our personal planets and how we relate to the more unpredictable ones. So the next stage of Saturn is, Saturn's going to kick your butt. It's going to test you and test you and test you until you prove to yourself and the universe and everybody else that you're determined to anchor something significant on the planet that's going to leave a mark. Because if you're not, you're going to be listening to somebody else's authority and somebody else's voice and somebody else's projection, maybe the parent's voice in the back of your head that says, no, I'm sorry, you're just not talented, you shouldn't be a musician, or you should, go into law, or you should do this, or teachers saying, you'd be much better doing this or that. And that's outer authority structures. And I always joke, like, wouldn't it be nice if they had guidance counselors coming in saying, the high priestess is in the room or over here, here's the shaman, here's career counseling of how to develop those abilities that you got really good at in past lives. We don't have those kind of dialogues. Those kids get medicated, or, they have to run off and live on the road for 10, 15 years, like me. So there's all these things that get bypassed. They get no attention. They get no validation. And then all these blessings become a curse because you're alone with it. And it's like, wait a second, this is to help people. This is to heal the planet. Why is all this mud getting, thrown? Why all this misunderstanding? Why all this isolation? Why is it so difficult to just do good? And why is this schmuck over here getting rewarded for being, greedy and all about himself? So it doesn't make much sense, but I think we've all gotten over that kind of hump. But Saturn tests us. It says, okay, here's the outer authority. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to let yourself be controlled? Or are you going to pass the test, which means you're going to anchor and ground your dreams, your epiphanies, your transformation from these outer planets, and then take Saturn and say, I'm my own authority. I don't need to listen to those outer voices. I'm my own boss. I'm responsible for me. I'm responsible for my choices. So Saturn also can become limitation that serves us, limiting bad habits, limiting negative behavior, limiting parts of ourselves that get out of control, maybe like the negative ego that's not thinking enough. So then Saturn is a limitation, but it's not a limitation that blocks us and suppresses us. It's a limitation that can help refine us and define, our goals more, and then be responsible to those goals, like having children. That has a lot to do with Saturn. You're responsible for your kids. Marriage, another thing ruled by Saturn. Commitment, responsibility. But when governments and religion and school systems get their hands on Saturn, it's very, very rule-orientated, and self-esteem is very affected. Actually, low self-esteem is connected to Saturn. When you look at a person's chart, if they have a lot of Saturn afflictions, they got really low self-esteem. But you know what? It's not real low self-esteem. It means that their gifts have been shoved so far away from them that they're so lost in the world, they don't feel very comfortable. They feel afraid to express themselves. It's not an insecurity because there's lack. It's an insecurity because there's no permission. But once you get that back, you start to create that foundation. And when the foundation is complete, then you get to move inside and enjoy it, which then leads to Jupiter, a similar planet to Saturn. It's not an outer planet. It's not a personal planet. But Jupiter's all about expansion. Jupiter is all about inspiration. Jupiter is all about the higher mind. It's all about inspiration. And so Jupiter works with us a lot, you know, where we see synchronicities fall into place, where we run into people when we least expect, where something happens and it's just like, wow, this was really awesome and this is really good. It creates a lot of positive energy. But there's also the afflicted Jupiter, which exaggerates everything, which wants the goodness so much that it just goes a little bit overboard. So, you know, people with maybe addiction problems or drinking problems tend to have Jupiter in a challenging aspect, which means too much of a good thing. And sometimes Neptune can throw it into the illusion. So the only reason I'm sharing these planetary energies is because this is part of our inner work. Everything that's outside of us is inside of us. So when we learn to work with what we've been given and we take the reins a little bit more, we become a master sailor and we become a skipper of the ship of humanity, and we help to guide, you know, people to a much better destination. And we also can teach them how to be a skipper of their own ship and empower others, and I think that's the most important thing that we can do right now. You know, the other thing is the earth, air, fire, water energies. On an alchemical level, the way to purify energy, to purify the planet, to purify her waters, her fire, her earth, and her air, is an inward process too. If we're in our negative ego, we're actually contaminating our waters, we're misusing our fire, we're harming our earth, and our air is just loaded up with all sorts of thought forms that aren't really our own or aren't really very empowering. And sometimes it's from the negative ego, the thoughts of, I'm entitled, I deserve to, you know, step on other people to have success because my father did it, and this is just the way it is to be successful in life. And so anyway, we can see the destruction it causes. We can see what it does to us. And when we choose to start to purify that part of who we are and we align it with spirit, that's when alchemy happens. This is what's happening on the planet. When humanity begins to step away from these dark agendas that enable us to stay stuck in the negative ego, and we remember who we truly are and what we're truly connected with, we align with spirit and we create global alchemy. And if enough of us does this, the earth will respond and her elements will be healed and cleared and purified. So we have to do the inner work because the earth is going to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to match you on that. She's an unconditional loving mother who is willing to show us where we're going wrong so that we can get things right. You know, and we see a lot of suffering. We see the misuse of the resources. We see all this exploitation, and it's horrible. But at the same time, Mother Earth is a multidimensional body. She's seated with a 13-dimensional core. And this is a very, very special planetary body. This particular pocket of energy we're in, I consider it to be like a holding tank. It's specifically for soul development. We're going to see all sorts of things that disturb us, but we have to learn to work with it. We have to learn to manage it. We have to learn to make sense out of it enough so that it can, you know, help us. So I always say, you know, turn the weapons that they're throwing at, you know, turn the things that they're throwing at us, the weapons, the assaults, the abuses, and turn it a weapon against them by using it for your benefit. You know, anything that they throw at us that we don't like or we feel like we're going to, you know, be doomed because of it, you know, use that as a tool for your empowerment. Dr. Dre mentioned it earlier when he looks at chemtrails. I do that when I look at chemtrails. I let it remind me of why we're here. I let it remind me of my own empowerment because I know the very thing it's trying to do is take that away so that you keep amping it up and amping it up. And this is the thing, same thing with the physical body. We go to doctors, you know, and we go wherever we can go to get assistance when we're dealing with some of these outer planets because we're not taught how to handle it. When we get that Pluto energy of the death rebirth, we go into the dark night of the soul, and it can take a long time. We can't call into work for that. When we have shocks and upheavals and crises, we can't, you know, tell somebody, Hey, I need a little bit of time off to be able to get the deeper message. No, it's like, well, give me a doctor's note. That's how we're raised. Go to this person because it's only valid unless this person tells you, and then they're going to tell you what to do about it. And that's how we're taught, and it's so conditioned into us that we've lost all ability to be able to process, to assimilate, and to have the greatest benefit from these forces, because that's really what they're for. They're here to help us. But you hit these energies, or humans hit this energy, and next thing you know, they're off giving their money to somebody. They feel like the world's out to get them. They can't let go of whatever they need to let go of, and their body fights it. Their consciousness fights it, and then the physical body is like, okay, I'm going to show you a bunch of symptoms to help you get back on track. And then it's even worse. Let's go on drugs. Let's take pharmaceuticals, anything to escape this inner work. But this is like the most beautiful thing in the gift of nature, is that it's giving us everything we need. Life is giving us everything we need to get to where we need to go. And we got to start trusting it more. We got to start listening to it more. We got to start working with it. And it's not terrible to go to a doctor. It's not terrible to need assistance, as long as the frame of mind is geared towards, okay, I need this help for the short term, but from here, I'm really going to look deep inside. I'm really going to pay attention to what the message is. I'm really going to allow myself to release. And if it's something you can't let go of, with forces like this, we can tend to block it. But with forces like this, if we resist the changes are going to happen anyway. I mean, when you think about it, when we eat food that's poisonous, we naturally throw up if the food's not good for us. We don't have that eject button so well on our minds and our hearts and our emotions. It's very easy to hold on to stuff. Luckily the physical body's pretty darn good at expelling stuff that it doesn't like, but it still can hold on to toxins. But we don't want to become so desensitized by buying into everything else around us to the point where our natural abilities to eject what doesn't serve us becomes crippled, or else it becomes toxic. Emotions become toxic. Mental thoughts that don't serve us become toxic. And so regardless of what's being sprayed, regardless of what's happening to this planet, we have an internal mechanism that knows how to keep ourselves clean, to keep our aura protected, to keep ourselves grounded, because we're the most advanced technology, and we can pretty much handle all of this. When our consciousness is in the higher dimensions, we work with the physics of higher dimensions that is able to process a lot of this stuff. So that protection is really important, and it's just important to know that we really do get everything we need. I think we can just start a day of our lives and look at the quality of our relationship with ourselves, our loved ones, our living situations, the way we're creating abundance, and it pretty much gives us all the information we need about how we're doing. And that's all the homework we need to just start to say, okay, I can work with this. I can create changes like this. If we start to lose that and we look at the outer world and we get lost with all the news stories and everything that's going on, we're trying to solve something outside of ourselves when the solution's in here. So the only reason I share this is because this is what got me to where I am now. In 2006, I was recruited to go off planet to planet Mars, and I had been pre-targeted before birth. So it's very difficult when the minute you're born, you're like really targeted. And I think a lot of people, have this going on. The whole human race is basically targeted. This was very specific, though, because I came in with one of those kind of missions that they had their eyes on. And this family line, has a connection to it. So it was like, okay, she wants to help create global alchemy. She wants to help empower the divine feminine. Well, that sucks, because we're trying to keep her in exile. We're trying to keep her programmed. We're trying to keep the ego of the masculine in charge here. We don't want that. So that was part of the targeting I ended up discovering, was to just cripple my ability to do what I came here to do. All of us, on some level, when we take a stand, there's something out there that wants to stop us. But that's the very force that can make us stronger and more powerful. And that's when I started to use it for my benefit, rather than let it disempower me and destroy me or take me off this planetary body, which I didn't want to do. And so, it's just interesting times we're in, because it is a Mars agenda. And when we think about Mars, Mars is like the ego energy. It's the warrior energy too. And Mars, an agenda all by itself, would perpetuate the aggression and domination and control that we're experiencing. So the one thing that I figured I could do, if anything, was empower the Venus energies, because the Mayans understood the Venus transits and how that played into the calendar and what the planetary body is doing in the sky. It's forming a perfect pentagram. It's all its orbits and its whole journey creates a perfect pentagram in the sky. And it actually creates sacred geometry designs. And it's connected to the rose. So the planet Venus, even astronomers, astrologers have noted this, is doing something amazing. So then we hear about, books like Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. So it gets kind of funny because we really need to understand how important these forces are within us and how we can affect change in the outer world based on Mars and Venus. How to bring the masculine and feminine together again in sacred union within ourselves. How Mars can sort of give up its ego power for love so that its free will choices can choose love instead of domination and control. So as this hidden Mars agenda has been behind the scenes for a long time, I'll talk a lot about that in my presentation about ET government treaties, Alternative 3, going off planet, and a lot of that hidden stuff to give a lot more meaning to what I'm sharing. We also have this Venus stuff going on. So what does that equate to? What are we learning here? We see this playing out in the outer world, a hidden Mars agenda, a hidden negative ego agenda, and something about Venus doing something really spectacular. Well, this all relates to us because we are these energies. So it's the goddess returning within men and women. It's the love. It's the unconditional love. It's healing the heart and recognizing that a lot of people with a big heart are suffering a lot, They can't let go of the past. They have so many regrets. They feel guilty. They feel pain. They feel remorse. But that's a symptom of a beautiful heart compared to somebody who does all sorts of things and doesn't even think twice and doesn't even care, doesn't even self-reflect, doesn't even have any thought about it. So if you're one of those people that are just stuck in the heavy density of the past, cut yourself a lot of slack because that's your beautiful heart and it cares. And it's time to empower that part of who we are instead of hide it in shame, instead of, just feeling the weight of the world and just, really lost in all of it. But to empower it, we have to align it with Mars. For Mars to calm down, it has to align with Venus. The goal is for the heart chakra and the ego, the solar plexus chakra, to become one. And that's the ultimate, because when they're not, we're easily manipulated. It's easy to compartmentalize, where Mars is over here and Venus is over here. The masculine's doing this, the feminine's doing this. And it's not gender specific. Some men carry more of the Venus energy, some women carry more of the Mars energy. And there's different octaves of each of these planetary bodies. But the best way they work together is when you fuse power with love, of course. And so on the outer stage, which I've worked real hard at in my presentations to connect all the dots so we can see this larger story and how it relates to us, we're working with a hidden Mars agenda, and the more we can align our ego with our heart energy, the more we dismantle it, the more we expose it, because we understand that instead of giving our power away to the facade they create so they can get away with this behind the scenes, we're empowering our heart, our unity, because that is what's going to shift everything. We've got stargates on the planet. They connect with our DNA, and our DNA advances in the rate at which the planetary body opens her natural stargates. We're in a period right now where the planetary body's in alignment with the galactic plane. So everything's getting purged. All those things I was talking about are being forced out of us. If you've had a really intense last year or maybe last 5 years of just releasing and facing all sorts of things within yourself, this is the time, and this is why it's so important, because during this stellar activation cycle in this window period, these energies are so strong compared to what they used to be when the Earth was knocked off its axis so much. And so now that it's back in alignment, and all these agendas are trying to steer our attention away from what we're able to naturally receive and empower, we got to take a stand and start to divorce ourselves from it, like a mate that just doesn't step up to the plate in the relationship. It's cheated us, it's lied to us, it's betrayed us. It doesn't need our attention. Even though we still need to go through the motions, we don't need our consciousness to be immersed in it. We don't need to lose ourselves to it. And that's how we're going to start to turn things around. And so as our heart energy and our ego energy become one, we're going to start to see the world, the masculine and feminine energies coming together again. And we're at a point where the Mars agenda is at a certain stage where, even though it first started off sort of as a good idea, protect the human genome, get them off planet in case something happens, it ended up getting completely infiltrated, and now it's all about either New World Order, the absolute control and chipping of humanity, or our total extermination for the sake of a few on Mars, well, millions, a few in terms of 7 billion people on the planet, getting all the technologies and all the joys and all the thrills while everybody else, perishes. This is what the negative ego does in our own personal lives when we don't include our heart. Everything perishes. We lose everything, and we think that we're so great and superior, and then all of a sudden it catches up with us. So of course it's going to catch up with us. Nature, laws of nature, cosmic laws, know that it will. But The glitch is that they've got all these different technologies and they can stay alive and they can keep their life cycle alive through these technologies, which has a lot to do with why abductions happen and why there's a lot of time travel manipulation to manipulate history. But nothing can trump source. Nothing can trump spirit. And this is the power of alchemy. No matter what we're looking at, no matter what, we're faced with, it's not about death. It's not about the fear of death. It's not about survival of the flesh. If we really wanted to try real hard to stay alive, we got everything stacked against us because we all die. Number one, whether it's in a plane crash with 5 people, whether, we fall. I choked on a tortilla chip the other day, and I was like, after all that I've gone through, I can't believe that this might take me out. So whether it's a tortilla chip, peanut butter that you're choking on, you're in a plane crash, or like the world's getting exterminated, death is around every corner. So forget about the fear of death. It has nothing to do with the fear of death. This period that we're in right now is actually a very potent time to lift the veils between life and death and begin to see our multidimensional energy, that we're so beyond this little experience that we're in, but everything is trying to keep us in the gravity of it. So once we let go of all that, it doesn't matter if they're going to exterminate us, because we're going to wake up somewhere else better anyway. And if they don't exterminate us, we're going to rehabilitate this planet. We're going to get it back on track. The thing is, it's not about survival of the flesh. It's about liberation of the soul. Our soul purpose should be on protecting that part of ourselves, protecting and honoring and guarding the sacred energies of life, not letting anybody touch that. We do have control over that. We might not have control over when we die, but we can certainly protect ourselves. And the best way to protect ourselves on that level is to live from your heart and soul and forget about what anybody else has to say. I think we are all living survivors of being ostracized, being misunderstood, being, whatever, the misfit, this and that. Most of my time growing up, it was easier to be the screw up. It was like, okay, I'll wear that hat. Nobody really wants to hear what I have to say. I'll play the screw up. That works for people. It's easier for them. But you guys just wait, because I'm going to come out and I'm going to say something that you still might think I'm crazy for. But I'm going to feel grounded about it, and it's going to be healing for me because it's my truth. And that's the only thing that matters in the end. The one thing I was able to recover before I had anybody wanting to hear me was that I recovered my health. I recovered my sanity because I stayed so true to myself regardless of what got lost along the way. And then I ended up, feeling good. And when they saw that, it was like, okay, well, whatever it is must work for her. Now, what are you talking about? And then the curiosity started to come. But it's like you got to live from the inside out instead of the outside in. If it's all about what other people are doing and how they feel about you or what's happening on the planet and what's going on with all this, it's going to destroy us. But if we look from the inside out and we guard our soul energy and we protect it and we stay true to it and we live from our heart and we're empowered in our truth and we speak our dreams and visions into reality, it doesn't matter because it's going to start to take hold and it's going to start to reflect itself back. We're dealing with lots of different timelines all at the same time. We're witnessing things and roads we're never going to go down, but we can see other people potentially going down them. So our job is to be that skipper of the ship, to know that we do have control over some things. We don't have control over everything, but the things that we don't have any control over are really on our side. These greater forces are really here to help us. But we have to graduate from the archons, which are archdemons and archangels, where we got little entities trying to screw us up and make our life a living hell. And then we've got the angelics that are, creating blessings and this and that. But they don't pick and choose. We pick and choose. What energy are we carrying? When adversity strikes, do we go into the negative ego and conjure up demons to show that we're powerful and then recognize, oh my God, I've been working with evil forces? Or do we handle adversity and do we have a certain sense of calmness, neutrality, love, acceptance, tranquility, trust in the process? And then it's like, of course, the legions of spirit guides and angels show up because we're invoking them, similar to when we change our lifestyle. If we continue to have a negative lifestyle, our immune system's going to be sitting there saying, hey, I'm waiting for you, but I'm not going to do it for you. It's when we start to change, when we start to introduce things that are good for us. When we choose, I joke about this because this is actually what I did. I chose kombucha instead of beer and, started to bring in things that were better for me. And then my body was like, yeah, okay, I was here all along. I just needed you to take that step. And that's what the planetary body and the whole of humanity is up against right now. We have all the forces in the world to help us with this. All the forces that we don't have a whole lot of control over are helping us with this. We just have to take that step up and say, I'm ready. And then the forces we don't have any control over that are dark, that are of a darker nature, won't need to be pushing our buttons so much. But we have to understand they push our buttons for a reason. They don't know they do it for a reason. They don't need to know that. Their only role is to be evil. They signed up for it. They're like, I'll play the villain. But the greater picture is that in order sometimes, to really see who you are, you have to see who you're not. You have to fall on your face. You have to see that what you're working with is destructive and then self-correct. And there are legions of dark beings that will be right there with us to perpetuate those mindsets. Once we move past the archangels and archdemons, the realm of the archons, that's when we start to get back to our galactic consciousness and the true connection with spirit, and we actually earn our free will in a real way. And it's not that we don't have it right now, but we're playing around with energies. We're learning, incredible things right now. But it's going to come from our own wisdom body, nobody else. But everything else is here to help develop that. And as long as we remember that this is the home base and everything else out there is here to push our buttons or inspire us so that we can develop this, then we're not going to feel the struggle so much anymore. And that's the beautiful thing about life. It's like, I'm not here to share like fluffy messages so much, but then I feel like kind of fluffy, but I haven't had a fluffy time at all. So it's not just coming from, doesn't that sound nice? It sounds really great. Literally, it's what helped me to, rise again. I left my body for about 20 years. I had like maybe 2% of myself in my body, and it was confirmed at this clairvoyant institute I went to. And it was that Pluto thing I was talking about. It just lasted a really long time, and it was actually the labyrinth. That's why I got it tattooed, because it was like this crazy journey going into like the matrix and having to bust past the gatekeepers and controllers and agendas and manipulations, and it just took me so long. And it was like I was dead. And I had to live this double life of like trying to bring myself back. And it's really hard when you're trying to carry a job and sit in school. It's just like, I'm going through the gateways of death. I'll be back. That's why I can't pay attention. You can say I have ADD. You can tell me I have all these learning disabilities, but you have no idea what I'm doing. Let me space out because I'm busy. And so this is what's really awesome, because it doesn't have to be like that long and drawn out, of course. But if there is that level of stuff that we agreed to clear or help purify or help wake up, you just know it's your mission, and accept it as such. Because once you know it's your work, it doesn't become so personal. And that's the thing. I'm just really excited because, we've had our butts kicked in the last couple months, and it's just been a really intense, last couple months. And it just means so much to all gather together because, sometimes when we talk about the happier stuff or the fluffy stuff, it gets criticized. If we talk about the dark stuff too much, it gets criticized. When we put the two together, though, each of us, that light and dark energy, we recognize that the darkness is the soil, and it needs the seeds of our higher consciousness to be planted in it to create new realities. If it's outside of us, it's going to be the fluffy information, and it's going to be the conspiracy information. When we merge the two together and we understand that the both are connected, and we can work with both in order to achieve the greatest result, that's what we're looking at. And it's not unity where, it's just all about fourth chakra love, 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 love. It is about love, but it's about diversity in harmony. That's oneness, appreciating our individuality. Another thing about Uranus and why it creates breakthroughs and epiphanies, it's not a breakthrough and epiphany of us all just unifying, because that's what we have to do. It can only come from being an individual and knowing yourself, knowing your uniqueness, knowing your special role, knowing what makes you you, and being absolutely and totally true to that. If it feels like it's about joining this or agreeing with this belief system or signing up for something else to experience unity, it's going to end up going back into battle zone again, because things are going to clash, because it's going to expire if it's not your truth. But if we can all respect one another's truth and individual differences, and we can recognize that if we can accept that, we can create harmony, and that's true oneness, then we've achieved the web of life on a soul level. Because believe me, nature is oneness, but it's completely and totally diverse. Squirrels know what to do. Dolphins know what to do. They all know their role. They don't have to think about it. They don't have identity crises like we do. It just all works. And that mandala is what keeps ecosystems alive. It keeps the planetary body alive. It knows exactly what to do, but it's based on diversity and harmony. And so if we could do that on a soul level, each appreciate our uniqueness and our differences and not clash about it, but hold space for it and allow it to play out its role, we're going to achieve the same thing, and the synchronicities are going to line up. Just like when a butterfly knows when to migrate, we're going to know when to get up and be at the right place at the right time to meet a soul family member that's going to link us to the next phase of our journey. And we're going to notice that everything is just so magical. And we're living proof because we all have experienced this in our lives. This is why we know who we are and what we're dealing with, because we know that magic exists. So if you feel lost or a little bit thrown off at times, Just remember, where our home base is. Remember your uniqueness, your individuality, what it means to be true to you, and let life be your teacher. Let the things that are organic show you the way, because we get everything we need to get to where we need to go, as long as we don't let somebody else stand in our power and do it for us. And that's just not going to work. Maybe temporarily, but when it comes down to it, it's us, and we know exactly what we're doing. And if we don't, it doesn't matter, because sometimes the fruit's not ready to fall off the tree, and sometimes you need just the downtime. We're taught to just do, be busy, busy, busy. What about dream time? What about sleeping in? What's up with the word lazy? I mean, let's just change all this negative languaging, because we need to rest. We need to recharge. We need to not know. We need to embrace the mystery. That's part of the divine feminine we've lost, because when we embrace the mystery, we're in our creative power. We can start to think about our intentions and our visions and what we'd like to see happen. And sometimes we don't know. We need downtime. We need to be able to open our field up to it. And so the more we can trust the wind and the waves and our ability to be adaptable and flexible to it, we're not going to judge the times we need to rest, the times, we feel like we should be doing something else. It's always, shouldn't I be doing this differently? Am I doing it right? Absolutely, 100% all the time. Let your mind adjust to that. That's why there's mind control. It's because it knows that if it can screw with this part of us, everything else will get out of alignment. When we can get that back and define things for ourselves, we're in really good shape. So anyway, in my 2 next talks, my workshops, I'll be going deep into the galactic history and a lot more detail about ET government treaties, Gaia as a planetary body and how it came to be what it is today, and the Sophia Gaia energies and how it connects to mythology and archetypes, and some really new interesting information about the military-industrial complex and breakthrough information that we haven't heard before that's just come up in the last couple months that I think people would be really happy to hear, because it's actually good news from the inside, with some real good forces within that structure that's coming to really support us and help us. And it's a part of the military, believe it or not. And it's actually something Eisenhower set up in the 1950s that never got disclosed, and it was to keep the MJ-12 boys in check in their misuse of alien technology, and now they have authority to arrest these people because things have gotten too far. So I was like, yay, Ike, had no idea, till 2 months ago. Anyway, so I'll be going into that, and today we have Dr. Dream. He's going to be doing a workshop at 4, and it's a practical guide to ascension, and it's awesome because it is practical, and it's just easy to just gain this practical wisdom and just use it immediately. It's awesome. And then my first workshop is at 7 today. And then tomorrow I have a workshop at 2, and then we have a galactivation at 8. It's the rose frequency galactivation, and rose is the highest vibrational essential oil, and it's really just the whole galactivation's on that high vibrational level, and it's just good to really recharge. My first talk will cover a lot of the ET government stuff and what I was talking about with the military-industrial complex, and some really good news on that. And my second talk is more about the archetypes, the mythology, the planetary body, and timelines, stargates, and ascension. I just want to thank you all for being here, and it's just really exciting because, it can get really difficult until we're in the room together, until we start to share and talk, because it's just a great reminder that we're all reflections of each other, and we're all doing this incredible work together, and we already have victory. If we think we don't, we got to turn that into a different perspective, because it really is all in our perspective, because we are master sailors of this crazy ship of humanity. So thank you, everybody.